He lives in a big, noisy and crowded city with a busy rhythm of life. But he is interested in another world. A world with no fuss, where a person lives preserving the heritage of his ancestors and the precepts of nature. Konstantin Kuksin, an ethnographer, traveler, a current member of the Russian Geographical Society, as well as the founder and director of the Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow. Nomads of the Great Steppe are his favorite topic, and he can talk about it for hours.
Про кочевую цивилизацию.
About the nomadic civilization that, like a patchwork quilt, covers our planet. We will talk about all of this on the sacred land of Ulitau. Welcome to Ulitau. Konstantin Kuksin in the new season of Dala project.
Нет, речь сегодня...
Today we will not talk about music, we will talk about ornaments. But what is an ornament if not music set in stone, wood, fabric or carpets? Today I will talk to the director of Karaganda State University's Museum of Archeology and Ethnography, Marina Bedelbaeva. Marina, hello. In what era does the history of the ornament begin on the territory of Kazakhstan? Not only the Kazakh ornament, but ornaments in general.
You're right. It is really music. And the fact that the dombra has an ornament, my blouse has an ornament, the carpet we're sitting on has an ornament is evidence that ornaments are all around us. They're everywhere. I'm not an art scholar, but I would like to start the conversation about ornament from ancient times. There are many magnificent monuments with rock art, and one of the most famous ones is Terek Auliye. It was made in the 2nd millennium BC. That is almost 4,000 years ago. And the petroglyphs that are found on the rocks have no geometric ornament as such.
This is a very interesting point, because all ornaments can be divided into zoomorphic, anthropomorphic and geometric ornaments. Geometric ones are like mathematics or music. They have a certain time signature, rhythm, pattern. Why are there no such ornaments, really?
Well, you can't argue with statistics. Statistics show that no more than 5% of all petroglyphs have a geometric quality, and even they belong to a later time period. Although the so-called Koshkarmyus, the horns of Argali, mountain sheep or antelope, their images are found in petroglyphs quite often. A number of researchers see this as a means of documenting, mapping roots. They say that the petroglyphs are the work of nomads who, having established their nomadic routes, mapped out specific nomadic paths, leaving clues in drawings, indicating where the water source is, which trail is more comfortable, which pastures are good.
This probably started back in the era of hunters and gatherers, because if you look at the entire history of mankind, nomads appeared relatively recently.
You're right. But they were also hunters. There is an earlier group of petroglyphs, which date back to the Neolithic time. These petroglyphs depict hunting scenes. Scientists believe that it was possibly the depiction of a rite of a passage.
It could be.
Which was about boys transitioning to men, about their coming of age.
When I went on an expedition to South Africa to study the Bushmen, I took my 16-year-old son so that he would undergo the rite of initiation. The Bushman initiation rite is a hunt.
The world is huge. We know this now, in the age of the internet. But our ancestors also knew this, leaving this message on the rocks. The Kazakh ornament also passes a message. Let me quote an art historian, Vladimir Chepelev. Alkay Marghulan cited this quote in his work. The art historian said, Kazakhs seem to live in the world of ornament. And if we look into the history of the ornament diachronically, we will see the following very interesting pattern. Geometric quality of ornaments was present not in the rock art, but in the ceramics of the Bronze Age.
Why in ceramics? What is it connected with?
That's an interesting question. We don't have a time machine, so I cannot answer for sure. But one of the versions, which is supported by a number of modern scientists, is that certain spheres of nomadic lives were divided into male and female domain. Hunting, nomadic paths, pastures were a male domain. But ceramics, which is associated with the role of a homemaker and which carries a sacred meaning, is the domain of women. According to the research of a Russian archaeologist Yelena Kuzmina, women have always been engaged in making ceramics. This was women's work. And the geometric ornament, which was applied to the Andronova pots, carries a certain meaning, carries archetypes of mentality that women passed on to their daughters.
This is a kind of proto-writing, an attempt to pass on to the next generations something very important for women of this family, this clan.
I think some scientists will not agree with us.
I worked in North Africa, in Libya, with the Tuareg people, and they have preserved a very ancient script, Tifinag, which can be translated as signs or badges. This is pure geometry, crosses, stripes, dots. This is one of the oldest writing systems, which is also the alphabet. So the Tuareg women teach their daughters Tifinag. Is there any connection between the ornaments on the pots found here in Kazakhstan and the ornaments that the Tuaregs still apply to their products?
Tuareg from North Africa. That's very interesting. Do you want me to draw parallels with the Andronova tribes, for example? Have you been to the Taldasai settlement in Ulutau?
Yes, of course.
The geometric ornaments are prominent in the finds uncovered in this settlement, and generally in settlements across central Kazakhstan. We can also find similar geometric ornaments in a zoomorphic style on 3 friezes, decorative lines, of Andronova pots. This is a common motif, a sort of a zoning of ornamentation. This is also a constant repetition. Some of them depict archetypal plots. For example, Ulutau, the Great Mountain, is depicted as a series of triangles throughout the frieze of the pot. These are meanders, which are just waves that show the mountainous step.
I know that you were in Peru. The Peruvian Inca used to have a holiday where, in order to cleanse oneself, they had to break dishes and light up a fire. Kazakhstan also has the ritual of purification by fire. It kickstarts a new year without diseases. We know that the Quechua people and the Kazakhs definitely have never crossed paths, although they are very distant relatives. All Indians came from Asia at one time or another. But these parallels are simply amazing.
They are similar even anthropologically. The landscapes and the places where the Quechua tribes live are also similar to the landscapes of the central Kazakhstan. We were driving up to Lake Titicaca. I fell asleep on the bus. When I woke up, I thought for a moment that I was surrounded by the Karaganda mountains, and the lake was Karaganda Lake, a teleportation of sorts. While being there, I came across another very interesting parallel, which perhaps contradicts my version that the pots were made by women. The polishing tool is a very common find among Taldasai and other settlements of the Bronze Age. This is a stone tool, which is very comfortable to hold, and one side of which is so polished that it is obvious that it has been used for shining things for a very long time. What it was exactly and how it was used was a complete mystery, especially since such polishers were found in Taldasai, Kent, and a dozen of other settlements. So there we were, standing in the pottery workshop of a Peruvian master, watching how he molds a pot using a potter's wheel, which is, by the way, a modern technology. But still, they preserved some of the ancient pottery traditions. So, when he finished molding his pot, he took a polisher, just like the ones found in the Taldasai settlement, a tool belonging to the Andronova culture, dips it first in water, then runs it like this along the edges and begins to shine the wall of the pot. We were just dumbfounded. It took a trip to Peru to understand what these tools are needed for.
You know, the time machine does not exist, but sometimes such ethnographic observations allow me to think that this is the time machine. A similar thing happened to me when I saw something and understood that this is how they did it in the past. That is, maybe people of this region did not preserve the tradition, but other people did. This is how ethnography helps historians and archaeologists. Well, the time has come to spin the wheel of history, leave the Andronovo culture and move to more recent times.
We all know about the magnificent discovery of the last century, the Bazarykh burial mounds. Scientists found felt carpets miraculously preserved in the depth of the permafrost. And these carpets are just like the ones we are now sitting on, Konstantin. They date back to the middle of the first millennium BC, which is 2,600 years ago. Studying these ornaments, the archaeologists found that they are comparable to the ones on the Kazakh carpets, which is astounding. They also have the motif of Ulu Ana, that is, the Great Mother, which is depicted as the two curls of argali horns.
These ones.
Exactly like the ones we see on this carpet. But perhaps this is the central piece, just like this one. They also have paired or unpaired images of the ram's horn, the Qoshqar miyuz. These ornaments originated in the first millennium BC. We are living in the 21st century, and we are surrounded by the same beauty and poetry of the Kazakh ornament. The succession line is clear and is proved by the research of modern archaeologists. Let's take, for example, the expedition of Zeynullah Samashev to East Kazakhstan to research the Bedelbaeva burial mounds, where, just like in the Bazarykh burial mounds, they have found felt items well preserved in the permafrost. The elements of a horse harness have a similar color symbolism and ornamental symbolism. So the parallels are not at all accidental. This is a prominent period in the history of all mankind. I would say because we are talking about a whole belt of Eurasian steppes that intersected with the Scythian Saka world, and accordingly, the Scythian Saka animal style. The question of the Scythian Saka animal style's origin is a big issue in modern Scythology and Saka archaeology. In this regard, we can be looking for another millennium. But the samples that archaeologists find in the monuments of the Scythian Saka period have very clear parallels and make it possible to date the petroglyphs.
Marina, this is a luxurious carpet we're sitting on, but if I bring it to Russia, people at best will think that it's some kind of an oriental carpet with oriental ornaments. Although we, experts, know that there is no single Orient.
There is some truth to this. If you take a similar carpet made by Kyrgyz craftswomen, it will have minimal differences, only in details.
Only a very good specialist will distinguish a Kyrgyz carpet from the Kazakh one.
Yes, I agree. This speaks of the Central Asian unity. The Scythian Saka unity that existed in the first millennium BC, which is now expressed in the unity of the 21st century. This is also an attempt to decorate our modern reality with replicas of that world.
I worked a lot in the neighboring Kyrgyzstan, where village women gathered every evening to make carpets, sherdaks, as they called them. The old women were telling some stories, while little girls listened. One person hemmed, another brought threads, someone else cut felt, that is, the whole village made the carpet. And the elders told me that the women weaved history into the carpet. How plausible is this? To what extent can a carpet be a book? After all, we know that there are electronic books, books written on parchments or stones. To what extent can carpets be a chronicle of the people?
It's just that we don't quite know this alphabet anymore. We don't know how to read it. Although these things are clearly passed on from generation to generation as some important homespun truth. For example, that underworld is the world of supernatural creatures. This is actually why the Kazakhs believe that sitting on the ground is bad, is taboo. You need to have a layer of some sorts between the underground world and the world that surrounds us. This is why they sit on carpets, which, together with its ornament, drives away evil spirits, evil forces, and contributes to the prosperity of life.
We heard an archaeologist's opinion about Kazakh ornaments, and now let's listen to another opinion, the opinion of a specialist who studies Kazakh ornament as a special form of language. The folk art is passed down from generation to generation. Our ancestors were masters and we are the successors of the dynasty. Letters make up words. Ornamental compositions are created using the same principle. Every ornament has a semantic meaning which you need to know. If you aimlessly apply ornaments, then their sacred meaning will be lost. For example, there is a zoomorphic ornament called the dog's tail. The symbol is taken from the Jati Kazina legend, which says that each nomad should have 7 treasures, and a devoted dog is one of them. This is where the Itkuyruk dog's tail ornament comes from. When solving a mathematical problem, you use a formula, and the formula for Kazakh ornamentalism must be sought in nature. With the help of ornaments, you can depict a blue sky, flying birds, white clouds, and a flowering earth. Ornament is a powerful magic.
I cannot agree more. This magic is present in these carpets. Note that there is a certain pragmatism to carpet making. For example, this carpet is made of 2 components. Relatively speaking, the background and the main part. The felt carpets were made in different colors. One, for example, in brown and the other in white. The craftspeople would apply the same ornament to both. For example, a frieze made of the ram's horn and some kind of rosette ornaments. They would cut it out, then swap the bases, and this would make a 2-color carpet.
So, a positive and a negative.
Yes, this would make 2 felt carpets, the ornament of which was sheathed with a special ribbon, which even little girls could do.
They listen to their mothers, grandmothers, and soak up everything. And even if people have forgotten the language of carpet ornaments, it is still important that this process of passing on the sacred knowledge preserves the culture. It is amazing how eco-friendly the nomad culture is. Everything is used, not a single piece of felt is wasted. We saw this when we talked about embroidery, when every thread is pulled out of scraps of fabric for patchwork quilts. Just think how well the people treated the world around them. They didn't throw away anything, used everything until it turned into dust. In my collection of nomadic culture, I have a lot of wooden items that are fastened with some kind of bronze pieces or brass nails. That is, a wood spoon cracked at some point, but they didn't throw it away. They fixed it with iron and used it for decades, until it made its way into my museum. Sometimes even we use these things. The Kazakhs also have a Tushkiiz carpet. I have a large Tushkiiz collection brought from Mongolian Bayan-Ulgi district. When museum visitors look at them, they think that it took the master a lifetime to finish the embroidery. I always draw attention to the fact that the strict geometry of Tushkiiz has a little deformity, as if someone made a mistake embroidering the ornament. I heard a version that Kazakh craftswomen made mistakes in one of the elements on purpose, so as not to anger Allah. For only the Almighty can create perfection. Or as the Russians say, humility before pride. The women think, I could make perfection, but I will not anger the Almighty.
Some artifacts from my museum have a similar intent. For example, a bone mirror has the same thing. It has a circular ornament that depicts sunflowers. It is so neat, so symmetrical, and yet an expert found a mistake in the lower right corner. The symmetry was disrupted. The flower petals were made slightly smaller. In general, this does not affect the perception of the composition as a whole, but it is quite possible that this mistake had a similar intent.
Not to anger God.
I believe in everyday pragmatism, because it is time-tested and because it allows us to keep the surrounding environment clean. And just like you said, what we see in every archaeological site or, say, in a number of museum exhibits, it all speaks to the fact that every action was carefully considered.
Все действия были очень и очень продуманы. Например, обратите внимание тут,
For example, look at the carpet we are sitting on and that ornament on this carpet.
который располагается на этом ковре.
It has solar symbolism. It also is filled with a ram's horns ornament, which also carry a significant meaning.
Вот этими вот бараньими рогами.
It is that sacred meaning that we unfortunately cannot understand to its full extent, but we comprehend its wisdom.
Сакральный контекст или контент, который.
And I hope that thanks to the efforts of the people who care, people like you, professionals, archaeologists, historians, ethnographers, craftspeople, various masters of arts and crafts, ornamental compositions will be easier to understand. More and more people will learn of their meaning and significance, and they will be a safe conduct for several hundred more generations.
Для еще нескольких сотен поколений.
Now let's visit modern masters and see how they decorate their products with ornaments. The Kazakhs have the concept of amanat, which is something that is passed down to posterity as a sacred covenant. 20 years ago, one elderly lady who was in her 90s passed me an amanat so that the masters who work with ornaments would not distort their symbolism. To illustrate, we cut out these ornaments from paper. One is a horn and the other is a ram's horn. Do you see how they differ? The ram's horn has this twirl, while a simple horn does not. The ornaments are used to ensure that the whole space around all four cardinal directions are in harmony. It's like a wish. They say that a good word is already half the cup of well-being. You only live once, so in order to live long, the tassels of ribbons that adorn the dome of the yurt are made from one single thread. The tassels are made voluminous not only for decoration, but with the wish that the family would grow and there would be as many heirs as possible. The art that our ancestors passed on to us is the subject of research not only for me, but also for my descendants. I am immensely glad that I continue the work of my ancestors. It makes me happy. The contemporary artists who live across the steppe create drawing inspiration from artists of the past. And this means that the culture of the nomads of the great steppe, a single culture, a single civilization, is still alive. Ornament is a superstructure. It is something additional. This is what elevates us above animals, what makes us truly human. Because we make something not to be warm, well-fed or cozy, we do it just because it's beautiful. And of course, we put in it a deep, sacred meaning.